Can you imagine working yourself to death only to find out your wife was scamming you for years? I never thought I would become the kind of person who checks their wife's phone while she sleeps, but desperation makes you do things you never imagined possible. It was 3 in the morning on a Tuesday when I found myself sitting in our bathroom with the door locked, scrolling through Madison's messages, and what I discovered changed everything I thought I knew about the past 3 years of my life. Let me back up because this story does not start there. It starts 6 years ago when I married the woman I thought was my soulmate. Madison Foster was beautiful, charming, and ambitious when we met at a mutual friend's barbecue. She worked in marketing for a boutique firm, and I was a software engineer climbing the ladder at a tech company downtown. We had everything going for us, or so I believed. Her mother Patricia never liked me much, always making comments about how Madison could have done better, could have married someone with more money or better connections, but I figured all mother-in-laws were difficult and brushed it off. The first 2 years of marriage were genuinely good. We bought a condo together, took vacations, talked about starting a family someday. Madison was energetic, always planning weekend trips or dinner parties with friends. Then about 3 years ago, things started to change. She began calling in sick to work more frequently, complaining about headaches and fatigue. She started sleeping more, sometimes 12 or 14 hours a day. She stopped seeing friends and stopped wanting to go out. I was concerned, obviously. I encouraged her to see a doctor, which she did, and that is when the depression diagnosis came. The therapist she started seeing, Dr. Vivian Hayes, explained that Madison was suffering from severe clinical depression and that recovery would take time. Madison quit her job shortly after, saying the stress was too much and that she needed to focus on her mental health. I supported the decision completely because I loved her and wanted her to get better. What followed were 3 years of me essentially carrying our household alone. I picked up extra freelance projects on top of my regular 60-hour work weeks. I took out a personal loan of $35,000 to pay for what Madison said was specialized treatment, expensive therapy sessions, and medications that her insurance would not cover. I handled all the cooking, cleaning, grocery shopping, everything. When Madison had bad days, which seemed to be most days, I would come home from work exhausted and still need to take care of her. My family started expressing concerns about a year into this. My younger brother Lucas would say things like, "Madison seems fine when you are not around," or, "I saw her out shopping with her mom last week and she looked pretty energetic." My sister Sophia was more direct. She told me she thought Madison was playing me, that something did not add up. I got defensive, told them they did not understand mental illness, that depression does not mean someone is sad every single second. I accused them of being judgmental and unsupportive. Eventually they stopped bringing it up, but the damage was done. Family dinners became awkward, phone calls less frequent. I had chosen Madison over them, and they knew it. The debt started piling up fast. Between the loan payments, credit card bills from all of Madison's medical expenses, and our regular cost of living on essentially one income, I was drowning. I had $67,000 in debt, not counting our mortgage. My savings account that had once held $23,000 was down to $800. My retirement fund, which I had been contributing to since I was 22, sat untouched only because I legally could not access it without penalties, but Madison had already asked about it twice. Then came the promotion opportunity. My boss called me into his office about 4 months ago and offered me a senior architect position. It was everything I had been working toward, a 40% salary increase, better benefits, actual work-life balance for once. The catch was it required relocating to our company's office in Denver. I was excited, thought maybe this could be our fresh start. Madison could find new doctors there, we could get away from her overbearing mother, pay off our debt faster with my higher salary. When I told Madison about it that night, her reaction was not what I expected. She started crying immediately, saying she could not handle a move right now, that it would destroy all the progress she had made with Dr. Hayes, that being away from her support system, meaning her mother and sister Aurora, would send her into a complete breakdown. She talked about how fragile she was, how she had been having dark thoughts lately, and how this could push her over the edge. I felt like the worst husband in the world for even considering it. I turned down the promotion the next day. My boss was disappointed but understanding. What I did not know until later was that they gave the position to someone else and that my career trajectory at the company essentially plateaued at that moment. No one wants to invest in developing someone who will not take opportunities when they arise. Madison's sister Aurora was around our place constantly, which I found odd given that she supposedly had a full-time job at a retail store. She would come over in the afternoons when I was at work, and I would come home to find them watching movies or looking at fashion magazines together. Aurora always seemed to have new clothes, a new purse, new shoes, despite working retail. When I mentioned this to Madison once, she got defensive and said I was being petty and jealous of her sister's happiness when she herself was suffering so much. Patricia, Madison's mother, was even worse. She would make comments about how I was not doing enough, how Madison needed more support, how if Madison had married someone more successful she would not be under so much stress. She paid for a vacation for herself, Madison, and Aurora to go to a spa resort for a long weekend about 6 months ago, saying Madison needed it for her mental health. I stayed home and worked overtime to cover the bills while they were gone. The breaking point started to form about 2 months ago, though I did not realize it at the time. I was at the office working late on a Friday night, trying to finish a project that had a Monday deadline. My coworker Grace Anderson stopped by my desk around 8 in the evening. Grace and I had worked together for 4 years. She was kind, hardworking, and one of the few people at the office I considered a real friend. She knew about Madison's depression because I had confided in her during a particularly rough patch when I needed someone to talk to. Grace sat down and seemed nervous, fidgeting with her phone. Finally she said, "Elijah, I need to show you something and I do not know if I should, but I think you deserve to know." She turned her phone screen toward me and there was an Instagram account for a vintage clothing business called Lunar Threads. The profile picture was artsy, a faceless shot of someone in a gorgeous vintage dress, but Grace scrolled to a post from 3 days earlier. There was Madison, my wife who had been too depressed to get out of bed when I left for work that morning, smiling and vibrant in a boutique somewhere, holding up a 50s-style dress and talking about her recent estate sale finds. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. Grace kept scrolling and there were dozens of posts: Madison at flea markets, Madison at vintage shops, Madison modeling clothes, Madison talking enthusiastically about her business that had apparently been running for over 2 years. The account had 47,000 followers. The posts talked about shipping items, about sales, about her passion for sustainable fashion. I could not speak for a full minute. Grace looked miserable, like she regretted showing me, but also relieved to have it out there. She said she had stumbled across the account randomly 2 weeks earlier when looking at vintage clothing tags on Instagram and recognized Madison immediately despite her not using her real name in the bio. She had been debating whether to tell me ever since. I went home that night in a daze. Madison was in bed watching Netflix when I got there around 9:30. She barely looked up, just asked if I could bring her some water and her medication. I did, like I always did, but my mind was racing. I did not confront her that night because I needed to think, needed to understand what I had just learned. Over the weekend, I started digging. I created a fake Instagram account and followed Lunar Threads. I went through every post, every comment, every tagged location. Madison had been running this business for at least 2.5 years based on the account history. She went to estate sales, flea markets, and vintage clothing fairs, sometimes multiple times a week. She had posts from locations 2 and 3 hours away, meaning she was taking day trips regularly. On days she claimed to be too depressed to leave the house, too anxious to go to the grocery store, she was actually out building a business. I found posts dated on days I specifically remembered coming home to find her in bed saying she had not eaten all day because she did not have the energy to make food. One post from 4 months ago showed her at some vintage market in a city 2 hours north on the exact same day she had texted me saying she was having a panic attack and needed me to come home from work early. I had left an important meeting, driven home in a panic, only to find her supposedly sleeping. She must have gotten home just before me. The rage I felt was unlike anything I had experienced before, but underneath it was this crushing sense of betrayal and humiliation. I had been working myself to death, had gone into massive debt, had sacrificed my career and my family relationships, all for someone who was lying to me every single day. But I did not confront her yet because something Grace said stuck with me. She had mentioned that the business looked pretty successful based on the engagement and the comments about sold items. If Madison was running a business this size for over 2 years, she had to be making money, possibly a lot of it. Where was that money going? I started investigating further, which is how I ended up checking her phone that Tuesday morning at 3 a.m. Madison always kept her phone locked, but I had seen her enter the passcode enough times to know it. I felt guilty doing it, felt like I was violating her privacy, but then I reminded myself that she had been violating our marriage vows for years. What I found was worse than I imagined. Text message threads between Madison and her mother Patricia going back years, casually discussing the business, discussing sales numbers, discussing how to keep it hidden from me. There were messages about bank accounts set up in Patricia's name where Madison was depositing her earnings. Messages about how much longer Madison thought she could keep up the act before filing for divorce. I took photos of everything with my own phone, my hands shaking so badly I had to retake several shots. There were conversations between Madison and Aurora too, with Aurora thanking Madison for the money she had been sending her each month. Apparently Madison had been giving Aurora $1,000 monthly as payment for backing up her lies and being her alibi when she went on business trips. The most damning thread was between Madison and Patricia from just 2 weeks earlier. Patricia had written, "Only 8 more weeks and you can file. We have timed this perfectly. He will owe you alimony and you will get half of everything including his retirement fund. You have played this exactly right, sweetheart." Madison had responded with, "I know, Mom. I just have to keep it together a little longer. The depression act is exhausting, but it will be worth it when I am finally free and have enough money to expand the business properly." I sat on that bathroom floor and cried silently for 20 minutes. 6 years of marriage, 3 years of what I thought was supporting my sick wife through a terrible illness, and it was all a calculated lie. She had researched depression symptoms, manipulated therapists, manipulated me, all so she could avoid working a real job while building her business and preparing to take me for everything I had in a divorce. I did not sleep the rest of that night. I called in sick to work the next morning, something I never did, and I went to see a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. I asked around discreetly and got a reference to someone with a reputation for being absolutely ruthless in divorce cases. Her name was Catherine Morrison, and she had a consultation available that afternoon. I sat in Catherine's office and laid out everything. I showed her the Instagram account, showed her the photos of the text messages, explained the whole situation. Catherine listened carefully, taking notes, and when I finished she leaned back in her chair and said, "This is one of the most clear-cut cases of fraud I have seen in 15 years of practice. We can absolutely work with this." She explained that what Madison had done was not just unethical, it was illegal. Hiding assets in preparation for divorce, lying about income, manipulating me into taking on debt under false pretenses, all of it could be used against her. Catherine said we needed to document everything thoroughly before making any moves. She told me to go home, act normal, and spend the next few weeks gathering evidence. That began the worst 3 weeks of my life. I had to go home every day and pretend everything was fine. I had to keep bringing Madison water and medication, keep listening to her complain about how hard her day had been lying in bed, keep watching her perform this elaborate act. All while I knew the truth. Several times I almost broke, almost screamed at her, but Catherine's voice in my head kept me focused. We needed ironclad evidence. We needed to document everything. I installed a hidden camera in our living room, legal in our state as it was my home too, and caught Madison on multiple occasions being perfectly energetic when she thought I was not watching. I caught her on the phone with her mother discussing their plan, talking about how I was so gullible and how easy it had been to manipulate me. I caught her video chatting with Aurora, laughing about how I had turned down the promotion, saying it was almost too easy. I hired a private investigator to follow Madison for a week. The investigator got photos and video of her at various locations for her business, meeting with suppliers, attending a vintage clothing expo 3 hours away where she had a booth. She had told me she was spending that weekend at her mother's house recovering from a particularly bad depressive episode. The investigator also confirmed the bank accounts in Patricia's name and found evidence that Madison had earned approximately $78,000 from her business over the past 2 years, none of which she had reported to me or planned to report on our taxes. Grace continued to be an unexpected ally through all of this. She would check on me at work, make sure I was eating, let me vent when I needed to. She never said "I told you so" or made me feel stupid for not seeing the signs earlier. She just listened and supported me. I found myself looking forward to our coffee breaks, to having someone who knew the truth and did not judge me for it. Meanwhile at home, Madison was escalating her plans. She started talking more frequently about how she did not think our marriage was working, how she felt like I did not understand her struggles, how maybe we had grown apart. She was laying the groundwork for the divorce conversation, trying to make it seem like a mutual decision or even like it was my fault for being unsupportive. I would nod along, agreeing that things had been hard, all while recording everything. Patricia came over for dinner one night, which was unusual. Over the meal, she made pointed comments about how some marriages were not meant to last, how sometimes people needed to move on to be truly happy. She looked directly at me when she said it, almost challenging me. I smiled and said I agreed that people should not stay in relationships that were not serving them, and I saw Madison and Patricia exchange a look. The timeline Catherine and I worked out suggested that Madison was planning to file for divorce in about 6 more weeks. We decided to file first, but we needed to time it perfectly. Catherine wanted to wait until we had absolutely everything documented, every piece of evidence locked down. She also filed a motion to freeze any assets that might be hidden, pending the divorce proceedings. 3 weeks and 2 days after I first learned the truth, Madison decided it was time for a big conversation. I came home from work on a Thursday evening and she was sitting at the kitchen table, not in bed for once, looking serious. She had clearly prepared what she was going to say. She started with, "Elijah, we need to talk. I have been doing a lot of thinking and I do not think this marriage is healthy for either of us anymore." She went on about how she needed to focus on her healing, how she felt like I resented her for being sick, how she thought we wanted different things in life. It was a beautiful performance. I had to give her credit. She even managed to cry a little. I let her finish her whole speech, let her say everything she had probably rehearsed with her mother. Then I stood up, walked to our bedroom, and came back with a folder. I placed it on the table in front of her and said, "Before we continue this conversation, I think you should look at this." Madison opened the folder and I watched her face go through several emotions rapidly. Confusion, then recognition, then fear, then panic. Inside were printouts of her Instagram account, screenshots of her text messages with Patricia and Aurora, bank statements showing the hidden accounts, photos from the private investigator, transcripts from the recordings I had made, and right on top, divorce papers that I had already filed that morning. Her hands were shaking as she looked through the pages. She kept saying, "I can explain, this is not what it looks like," but her voice had lost all its confidence. I sat back down and said, very calmly, "I know about Luna Threads. I know about the $78,000 you have been hiding. I know about the bank accounts in your mother's name. I know you have been lying about being depressed for 3 years. I know about your plan to divorce me and claim I was financially abusive. I know everything, Madison." She tried to deny it at first, tried to say I was misunderstanding, but I just kept pulling out more evidence. Finally, she switched tactics and got angry, saying I had violated her privacy, that I had no right to go through her phone or hire an investigator. I reminded her that fraud is illegal, that hiding assets during a marriage is illegal, that what she had done was not just unethical but criminal. Then she tried crying for real this time, begging me to understand, saying she just wanted to follow her dreams but knew I would not support her business. I almost laughed at that because it was such a ridiculous lie. I said, "You could have just talked to me. You could have said you wanted to start a business and we could have planned it together like actual partners. Instead, you chose to destroy me financially and emotionally while lying every single day for 3 years." Madison called her mother immediately after I left the kitchen. I could hear her hysterical crying from our bedroom where I was packing a bag. Patricia arrived 20 minutes later and tried to intimidate me, threatened to call the police, said I was harassing her daughter. I informed her that she was named in the lawsuit too for a role in hiding assets and that she might want to get her own lawyer. She left shortly after, taking Madison with her. The next few months were brutal but satisfying in a way I had not expected. Catherine was as ruthless as advertised. We filed complaints with Madison's therapists providing evidence that she had manipulated them for diagnoses, which resulted in Dr. Hayes reporting her to the state medical board for fraud. We reported Madison's unreported business income to the IRS, which triggered an audit that revealed she owed back taxes on all $78,000 plus penalties. In the divorce proceedings, Catherine argued successfully that not only should I not owe Madison any alimony, but that Madison should be required to repay me the $35,000 loan I had taken out under false pretenses. The judge agreed, and also ruled that because Madison had hidden assets and lied about her income, I was entitled to a larger share of her home equity. I walked away with $65,000 from the condo sale, and Madison was ordered to repay the $35,000 in installments. Aurora lost her monthly stipend from Madison and apparently had to move back in with Patricia because she could not afford her apartment anymore. Patricia's role in the scheme came out during depositions, and her relationship with Madison became strained when Patricia blamed Madison for not being more careful. Turns out Patricia had also been skimming some of the money from the business accounts for herself, which Madison had not known about, and that caused its own fight between them. Madison's business reputation was destroyed when the court documents became public record and some of her followers found them. The vintage clothing community is apparently pretty tight-knit, and word spread quickly that she had built her business by defrauding her husband. She lost thousands of followers, several of her supplier relationships ended, and her business basically collapsed. Last I heard, she had shut down Luna Threads completely and was working at a regular job in retail for the first time in 3 years. As for me, I spent months in therapy processing everything. Real therapy with a psychologist named Dr. Robert Chen, who specialized in helping people recover from emotional abuse and manipulation, because that is what Madison had done to me. I had been emotionally abused for 3 years and had not even realized it because it was disguised as caretaking. I worked on rebuilding my relationship with my family. Lucas and Sophia were incredibly gracious about everything, never once saying they had told me so, even though they had. We started having family dinners again, and I felt like I could breathe around them for the first time in years. My parents were supportive too, my dad especially, who admitted he had suspected something was wrong but had not wanted to push me away by saying so. The debt is slowly getting paid down. Between the divorce settlement money and my regular salary, I have been making real progress. I am down to about $30,000 in total debt now, which feels manageable. I even started contributing to my retirement fund again, something I had not been able to do in years. Work-wise, my boss called me into his office about 5 months after the divorce was finalized. He said he had heard through the office gossip about what had happened and wanted me to know that another senior position was opening up in our local office. He said if I was interested, the job was mine, no relocation required. I accepted and got that 40% raise after all, just a year later than originally planned. Grace and I continued to get closer through all of this. She was there for every court date, every moment when I felt like I could not handle it anymore, every small victory. About 8 months after I moved out of the condo, Grace asked me if I wanted to get dinner sometime, not as co-workers but as a date. I said yes. We have been together now for 14 months, and it is the healthiest relationship I have ever had. Grace is honest, supportive, and actually wants to be a partner in every sense of the word. She has her own successful career, pays her own bills, and never makes me feel like I need to take care of her. We take care of each other, which is how it should be. We recently moved in together, and I find myself excited about the future in a way I had not felt in years. Looking back, I think the hardest part was accepting how completely I had been fooled. I pride myself on being intelligent, on being observant, on being good at problem solving. But Madison had exploited my compassion and my love, had weaponized my desire to be a supportive husband. She knew exactly what to say and how to act to keep me trapped in that situation. I learned that mental illness is real and serious and should always be taken seriously, but that does not mean people cannot fake it or use it as a manipulation tactic. I learned that I need to trust my instincts more, and that when multiple people who love me are expressing concerns, I should listen instead of getting defensive. I learned that being a supportive partner does not mean sacrificing everything about yourself, your career, your finances, your family relationships. Most importantly, I learned that I deserve to be with someone who sees me as an equal partner, not as a means to an end. Madison saw me as a paycheck, as someone who could fund her life while she built her business in secret. Grace sees me as a person, with dreams and needs and value beyond what I can provide financially. The other day I ran into Patricia at a grocery store. We had not seen each other since the divorce was finalized over a year ago. She looked older, tired, and she avoided eye contact. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she and Madison barely speak anymore, that the whole scheme falling apart had destroyed their relationship along with everything else. I did not feel satisfaction seeing her like that. I did not feel anything really, which I guess means I have finally moved on. Madison tried to reach out to me a few months ago through a mutual friend, saying she wanted to apologize and explain herself. I declined. There is nothing she could say that would change what happened to her that I need to hear. Some people suggested I was being too harsh, that everyone deserves a chance to apologize, but I disagree. She had 3 years to be honest with me and chose deception every single day. She does not get to clear her conscience now just because she faces consequences. The money from the divorce settlement is almost gone now, put toward debt repayment and building back my savings, but it served its purpose. I have my life back, my career back, my family relationships back, and I have found actual love with someone who values me. That is worth more than any dollar amount. If I could go back and tell myself from 4 years ago anything, I think I would say trust your gut but verify your trust. Love does not mean blind faith, it means partnership and transparency. Real support goes both ways. And if someone tells you they are too sick to work but somehow has energy for hobbies or shopping trips or anything else, ask questions. Pay attention. Do not let compassion override common sense. I also think about Dr. Hayes sometimes, the therapist Madison manipulated. I actually spoke with her after everything came out because she reached out to apologize. She was devastated that she had been fooled, felt like she had failed as a professional. I told her that Madison was convincing, that she had fooled everyone including the person who knew her best. Dr. Hayes said she had implemented new verification procedures in her practice because of what happened, ways to cross-check patient claims with observable behaviors. I am glad something positive came from it for her. The private investigator I hired, a guy named Marcus Shaw, told me during our final meeting that in his 20 years of doing this work, he had never seen such a calculated long-term deception in a marriage. He said usually people cheat or hide money for a few months, maybe a year, but 3 years of maintaining a fake illness while building a secret business was on another level. He seemed almost impressed by the audacity of it, which made me feel simultaneously validated that I had not been stupid to miss it, and horrified at how sociopathic the whole thing was. I think the thing that still bothers me sometimes is wondering how Madison could do it. How could she look at me every day, watch me work myself to exhaustion, watch me go into debt trying to help her, and feel nothing? How could she accept that $35,000 loan knowing it was based on lies? How could she let me turn down a career-changing promotion for her fake illness? The level of callousness required to sustain that for 3 years is something I still cannot fully comprehend. Grace says some people are just wired differently, that they see relationships as transactions rather than connections. She might be right. Madison clearly saw our marriage as a business arrangement where she could extract maximum value before cashing out. The irony is that if she had just been honest with me from the beginning, if she had said she wanted to start a vintage clothing business, I would have supported her. We could have budgeted for it, planned for it together, made it work. But that would have required her to still work and contribute to the household, and apparently that was not acceptable to her. Some nights I still have dreams about those 3 years. Dreams where I am working late at the office while Dream Madison is at home supposedly too depressed to function, but now I know what she was really doing. The dreams are not nightmares exactly, more like my brain processing the betrayal, rewriting memories with the truth layered over them. My therapist, Dr. Chen, says that is normal, that it takes time for your mind to reconcile what you believed with what was real. The support group I joined for people who have experienced financial abuse and manipulation has been helpful too. Hearing stories from others who went through similar situations makes me feel less alone, less foolish. There's a guy in the group named Thomas Wright whose wife convinced him she needed experimental medical treatments abroad, and he sent her nearly $100,000 over 2 years before discovering she had been using it to fund a gambling addiction. There's a woman named Harper Nelson whose husband faked a disability claim and made her support them both for 5 years while he secretly worked under-the-table jobs and stashed the money in offshore accounts. Everyone in that group understands the specific shame that comes with being deceived by someone you love, someone you trusted completely. They understand why it is hard to just get over it or why we could not see the signs earlier. They understand that the people who deceive you are often very good at it. That is why they succeed. I am grateful every day for Grace finding that Instagram account. If she had not, I would have been blindsided by divorce papers filed on Madison's timeline, would have been even more devastated and financially destroyed. Grace gave me the chance to protect myself, to fight back, to get some measure of justice. I do not think I ever properly thanked her for that, for risking our friendship and her own comfort to show me the truth. Our relationship now is built on complete honesty and transparency. We share our finances, not because we do not trust each other, but because we believe in true partnership. We talk about everything, even difficult things, especially difficult things. We support each other's careers and ambitions without keeping score. It is what a relationship should be, what I thought I had with Madison but never actually did. The condo sold for $40,000 more than we expected, which was a nice surprise. I took my share and put most of it toward paying off the last of the credit card debt. The rest went into a savings account that I am slowly building back up. It feels good to see those balances grow instead of shrink, to not wake up at 3 in the morning panicking about money, to know that I am building towards something real. My career has recovered nicely too. The senior architect position came with not just a salary increase but also better projects, more responsibility, more visibility within the company. My boss has mentioned that a director position might be opening up in the next year or two and that I should start thinking about whether that is a path I want to pursue. A year ago I would have said no immediately, too burned out and broken down to imagine taking on more. Now I am genuinely considering it. I reconnected with some friends I had lost touch with during the Madison years too. My college roommate Daniel Cooper reached out after hearing about the divorce, and we have started a monthly poker game with some other guys from our graduating class. It is nothing serious, just $20 buy-ins and an excuse to hang out, but it reminds me that I have a life outside of work and my relationship. Madison had isolated me so completely that I had forgotten what it was like to have a social circle. The legal aftermath finally wrapped up about 3 months ago. Madison finished paying back the $35,000 she owed me, though she fought every payment and was late several times, requiring Catherine to file enforcement motions. The IRS audit resulted in Madison owing significant back taxes plus penalties, which apparently wiped out most of what she had saved from her business. Patricia had to pay back the money she had skimmed, which was about $12,000, and that destroyed whatever remained of her relationship with Madison. Aurora actually reached out to me a few months ago to apologize for her role and everything. She said she had been young and stupid and desperate for money and had not really thought about the impact her lies were having on me. I appreciated the apology but told her I was not interested in maintaining any kind of relationship. Some bridges once burned should stay that way. The last I heard about Madison from mutual acquaintances was that she is dating someone new, some guy she met at her retail job. Part of me wants to warn him about what kind of person she really is, but Grace talked me out of it. She said it was not my responsibility and that getting involved would just keep me tied to that chapter of my life. She was right, as she usually is. I think about the whole experience now as an expensive education in human nature. I paid $67,000 in 3 years of my life to learn that people are not always who they present themselves to be, that love requires verification, not just trust, that protecting yourself is not the same as being cynical. Those are hard lessons but valuable ones. Sometimes people ask me if I regret marrying Madison at all, if I wish I could go back and never meet her. The answer is complicated. I regret the last 3 years, absolutely. I regret the debt and the manipulation and the lies. But those first 2 years when things were good, or when I thought they were good, those taught me what I wanted in a partner, even if Madison was not actually being that person. And the whole terrible experience led me eventually to Grace, who was genuinely that person. So maybe I would not change it even if I could, because the path led me here. Grace and I talk about marriage sometimes, cautiously because she knows how badly burned I got the first time. But she is patient and understanding and never pushes. We both know we are building towards something permanent. We just are not in any rush to put legal labels on it yet. Maybe in another year or two when the memories have faded more and I can think about marriage without my stomach clenching. For now, I am content with where I am. I have meaningful work that challenges me and pays me fairly. I have a partner who loves and respects me genuinely. I have reconciled with my family and rebuilt those relationships. I have friends and hobbies and a life that feels full in a healthy way. The debt that once felt crushing is manageable and shrinking. The future looks bright instead of terrifying. Madison's betrayal will always be part of my story that cannot be changed. But it does not define me anymore. I am not the guy who got fooled and used. I am the guy who figured it out, who fought back, who rebuilt his life even better than before. That is the narrative I choose to focus on. Justice was served in the end, not perfectly but substantially. Madison lost her business, her reputation, her financial cushion, her relationship with her mother and sister. And she has to live with knowing that her elaborate plan not only failed but backfired spectacularly. I got my life back, found real love, and learned lessons that will serve me for the rest of my life. In the balance sheet of outcomes, I definitely came out ahead. If anyone reading this is in a situation where something feels off in their relationship, where the numbers do not add up or the stories do not quite make sense, trust that instinct. Ask questions, verify information, protect yourself. It does not mean you do not love your partner, it means you love yourself too, and that is equally important. Do not let compassion or guilt or fear of seeming unsupportive override your common sense. And if you discover you have been betrayed like I was, know that you can survive it and come out stronger on the other side. Get a good lawyer, document everything, lean on the people who truly care about you, and do not be afraid to fight for yourself. You deserve honesty, respect, and partnership in your relationships. Accept nothing less. Looking back now from a place of stability and happiness, I can see how much I have grown through this experience. I am more careful but not cynical, more protective of myself but not closed off, more aware but not paranoid. I know what red flags look like now, and I trust myself to recognize them. Most importantly, I know my own worth in a way I did not before. Madison took 3 years of my life and $67,000, but she did not break me. If anything, she made me stronger, more resilient, more certain about what I want and deserve. That might be the most satisfying revenge of all, that her attempt to destroy me financially and emotionally ultimately just made me into a better, stronger, happier version of myself. She lost everything trying to take me down, and I am thriving. That is the ending this story deserved.